Hey everybody. So today we're going to talk about Ubisoft and Trouble in Paradise there. So I don't know how much you know about Ubisoft, but if you're a gamer, there's a very good chance that a game you've played was probably produced by Ubisoft. So even if you don't know them by name, you probably do know popular titles such as Assassin's Creed, and so they make a lot of games, and so we're going to go over some of the legal issues they're going through, their financial issues, and overall these are all problems related to company image, company reputation, uh, issues with developer retention, all that. And so we're going to talk about all that. But yeah, so these things have been going on for a few years now. So I went through and found some articles. I got them organized, and we're going to go through a small timeline starting in 2020. What happened? What's been happening at Ubisoft? All right. So to get started, we're going to start in 2020 when all of this started coming to light. So Kotaku released an article on July 12th, 2020 called Ubisoft says it won't address misconduct issues during today's digital showcase. So in the article, it says Ubisoft's big gaming showcase event today will be full of hype for upcoming Assassin's Creed and Far Cry releases, but it won't mention the stream of allegations, resignations, and overall upheaval happening as a result of weeks of reports about sexual misconduct across many parts of the publisher. So there was a tweet that they had posted on that day. It says Ubisoft Forward comes during a time of big internal change because all of the content has been pre recorded. We wanted to recognize that the issues we're currently dealing with won't be addressed directly in the show. We still have significant work to do and are committed to this process. We will provide more updates soon. And looks like as of today, there have been 524 replies to that. So yeah, so they, so after they posted that, the fact that it was pre-recorded that year was because of the pandemic, so it's usually a live show. So because they couldn't do it due to the pandemic, they decided to go with a pre-recorded thing, and so they opted not to try and squeeze in any sort of commentary about the allegations. I think that was just a cover. They just didn't want to talk about it. But, we go on here in this article. Um, it's hard to understand how a company with Ubisoft's resources couldn't have managed to work something in. And I agree that there's literally no excuse. I mean, as I sit here as someone who doesn't make money from this, that just does this YouTube stuff for fun, I can go in and cut stuff into whatever I want. I could go through this later on, and maybe, just maybe, if I mention it, you'll catch that it's real easy to slip stuff in later on. But, so there's really no excuse for them not to do it other than we just don't want to do it. But yeah, so allegations about Ubisoft developers and executives were circulating on social media just about a month before this article came out. Um, but there were some visible consequences. The creative director of one of the upcoming, well, it's probably out now, but an Assassin's Creed release was stepping down, and that happened on June 24th, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But so yeah, the on the night before, on the 11th, the company's CEO had announced that three of its most powerful executives and creative leaders were leaving the company just because of misconduct issues and because the company didn't do anything to deal with them sooner. So that's where we start in with 2020, and so let's go on into some more. So the next two articles that we're going to talk about from 2020, where they both came out August 14th, 2020 on Kotaku. And so the first one we're going to talk about, it was called Ubisoft's Me Too Reckoning 2 months later. So just this establishes that all of this actually started in June of 2020, where people started talking, and so this was definitely something that was going on for a while. They didn't want to do anything about it, but like all things that you sweep under the rug, eventually you can't ignore the lump, and then it just explodes, and that's what happened. But yeah, so you know, at the start of the summer, as the world roiled from multiple crises, something unusual and essential happened in video games. Started with a tweet, and then another, one by one, as people, mostly women, began speaking out regarding sexual harassment, abuse, and other misconduct at Ubisoft. Um, so, as this article goes on, um, there was a former Ubisoft developer had told Kotaku that apparently so many of us have been waiting for this moment to happen for years. Going on to say the floodgates started to open. At least one person stepped up and said, "Hey, I got a problem." And this person works for Ubisoft, and after that, lot more people started speaking up. So, like I said, it just started blowing up in their face because they didn't want to do anything about it. Um, and other highlights from this article um, point out that the company's chief creative officer, he stepped down. Global head of human resources left. That was a dumpster fire he created by well, because people weren't trusting HR anymore, and because his department was the one responsible for handling all of these complaints about sexual harassment and misconduct. So it's definitely a ball that he had dropped, and his departure definitely shows that he was guilty. Uh, and so then there were some other things that happened. They had their editorial group that makes government or game development decisions, and previously consisted of 7 white men. They're going to change the composition to a more diverse group. So, of course, this is 2020 in this article, and it's now 2023. So, those are things that have already happened, I'm sure. But you know, so all of this kept blowing up because they weren't doing anything about it. It was brewing for a long time. And yeah, so, and then at some point in August of 2020, Kotaku had sent Ubisoft a detailed list of questions about the allegations. And the only thing that they replied with was, "We are committed to create an exemplary culture where everyone feels valued and respected. We know that we are at the beginning of a long journey, but we are determined to implement the necessary changes to make Ubisoft a better place to work." But yeah, there were people in Ubisoft that did feel a little better that they were at least saying that they were willing to do better, but it was still a problem that they had to reach this point for them to do anything. And so usually when that happens, they're only doing it because they're pressured to do it. They're not doing it because they want to. So that kind of says something about the internal culture of Ubisoft. And this is obviously going to be a problem, and we'll find this out as time goes on, because again, this was just 2020 and things go on. But yeah, so Assassin's Creed, here's the other article from that same day, August 14th. Assassin's Creed creative director fired from Ubisoft following investigation into misconduct. Um, so yeah, let's see here. It says former Assassin's Creed Valhalla creative director Ashraf Ismail, who stepped down from that role in June. And yeah, so I'm just reading this real quick for you. But yeah, so basically, he was accused on Twitter of a pattern of trying to engage in affairs by leveraging his status and lying about being single. Um, and so so he was just trying to flirt with women that worked there, flirting with streamers. Like, it was just terrible stuff that he shouldn't have been doing. And but yeah, so this was all happening at Ubisoft. These things are damaging to a company's reputation. So you have to consider that, 2020 was when all of this started coming out. So we'll continue going on into 2021 here. So in 2021, the most relevant article that I found was put out by Kotaku on August 17th, 2021. It was titled Ubisoft Studio Under Investigation Over Sexual Harassment Workplace Discrimination Reports. So basically, this happened in Singapore's Ubisoft studio. And so the reason why they targeted this is Ubisoft Singapore has always been kind of known internally to be one of the worst Ubisoft studios in terms of culture, says one former developer, the publisher of Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. People would visit from other studios and be like, what the fuck is wrong here? And so the Singapore's national workplace watchdog called Tripartite Alliance for Fair and Progressive Employment Practices. That's a mouthful. TAFEP, I guess, is that's the acronym for it. But TAFEP is was urging people that if they know anything to report those incidents to the police. Um, so because they are, a watchdog, they have the ability to force Ubisoft Singapore to change its workplace policies, and so they may be tasked. Employers may be tasked to carry out an investigation through interviews with affected parties and witnesses and review documented evidence. So, I mean, they had forced Ubisoft to um, investigate the issues that they didn't want to look at, they didn't want to think about. But and not just Singapore. This investigation comes following reports that the company culture at Ubisoft, Montreal, Toronto, Quebec, Montpellier, and the head Paris office have also been found to be rife with harassment. So now we get to talk about some more recent history in 2022. So again, another Kotaku article. And you're probably wondering why I'm using a lot of Kotaku articles. They're just the best articles I could find that describe these, and they're a decent organization. But anyway, so on September 26, 2022, they put out an article called Ubisoft Boss Still Doesn't Get Why His Company is So Toxic. CEO Yves Guillemot keeps saying the wrong things about Ubisoft's serious ongoing culture issues. So he was interviewed with La Presse, and he was talking about friction in the creative process. And you would think, with all the history that was going on, that he'd be talking about the sexual harassment, the misconduct, and other abuse that was happening at the company. No, he was just trying to talk about, oh, we're talking about the creative tension that is common and vital in innovative companies like ours, where people have the freedom to challenge ideas and have heated but healthy debates. Yeah, that I mean, that's just a fact with any sort of development company. But that isn't going to cause the problems that they are having. So he continued to go on and talking about, oh, we're going to make a healthy, respectful working environment. We're going to fix our policies, all sorts of stuff like that. But he's still not addressing the issue about the bullying, the sexual harassment. So, like an example here that they went on to talk about was there was a bully, someone by the name of Michel Ansel. This was the designer behind Rayman and the original Beyond Good and Evil. He was tapped to direct the sequel. So, according to a 2020 investigation by French newspaper Liberation, Ansel was disorganized, would make impractical requests, and berate staff when he disliked the work they showed him. So, yeah, so three sources that were familiar with Beyond Good and Evil 2's development at Ubisoft Montpellier felt the allegations in the report were accurate and that Ansel's reputation as a toxic manager was well known within the company. Um, and apparently Guillemot knew. There was a 2017 meeting where he was confronted with reports and complaints about Ansel, and the CEO literally said that, oh, well, his stardom in the games industry was helpful for Ubisoft's public perception, made him hard to manage, and it would be up to staff representatives and HR to protect the people who work under him. And so, yeah, the CEO didn't want to do a damn thing about it. What a jerk. So he's just as guilty. And, these are things, these are the reasons why um, why Ubisoft is under so much fire, because there's so much just they. It's clear that they know that this was happening and they didn't want to do anything about it. But yeah, in a recent interview with Axios, Guillemot claimed ignorance of anyone's bad behavior. So he was lying, just lying about knowing anything that was going on when it's very clear he did. You know, and went on with some more excuses. Oh, we weren't organized enough to detect the problems and resolve them. Really? What do you mean? Somebody can't tell you there's a problem and you can't take action because you're not organized enough. No, you're fucking lazy. And but yeah, so they let's see here, and then we go on, and it just gets worse and worse because like things like if somebody brought something, showed Ansel something that he didn't like showed some work they worked on and it wasn't to his satisfaction, he'd berate them. And and so the company just didn't want to do anything about it, and that was a problem. I mean, if you're working in a company and you have a manager that's a jerk, somebody who's abusing, and you go to the people that are supposed to do something about it, and they're playing favoritism because this person's some sort of superstar and we're just going to let them get away with things. um, that's a problem. This is why Ubisoft's under fire. So they're definitely, they don't have their shit together if they're not going to take care of problems. And so reasonably so up to this point, they are definitely having problems retaining staff. People are leaving because of the reputation. Less people are applying. Like, this snowballs and will cause the company to implode. So we're going to go on to some more details about that here when we talk about this is affecting game releases and all sorts of stuff like that. And so we're going to look at another article from 2022, and this was earlier. This was out of sequence, but on July 21st, 2022, um, Kotaku put out an article. Ubisoft's bad luck streak continues with delays, cancellations, and cost cutting. And so we're talking canceling games, we're talking delaying releases. So for example, um, the game Avatar's Frontiers of Pandora, they had to push that back. They were trying to uh, originally put it out in time for the release of the new Avatar movie that just came out, Avatar: The Way of Water, that came out back in December. And but they didn't, now they're saying, at least in the time of this article, that the game is going to launch sometime around March 2023 at the very earliest. um, and that's actually really bad because that movie is doing exceptionally well at the box office. I think I was reading an article yesterday that said that they have already done 2 billion. And so no, it wasn't yesterday, it was this morning. And but yeah, they so Ubisoft's not going to get a cut of it. By the time they release this game, by the time it's out, it's nobody's going to care. um, but yeah, so they were canceling some games as well, because they're trying to cut back expenses, um, and to basically what they deem to be essential while they try to figure out what their next blockbuster hit's going to be. um, and that could have been Avatar, but you have to be stupid and not run your company right and not take care of your people right, and now your stocks aren't doing as well, your company's just doing not good, and that's Ubisoft's fault. That's management's fault. This is why it's happening. They could have fixed this. Because remember, this is in 2022, and we started, all these issues finally came to surface in 2020. They could have fixed all of the problems by the end, by, a year after it was resolved or after it was reported, because it doesn't take that long to do a proper investigation, figure out who's the problem, and sending people on their way and replacing them. It's a process. But because they went, like, they play favorites with people that are, like superstars and stuff, they're just letting bad people get away with bad behavior because they're special, and that's stupid. But yeah, so you know, and of course we're dealing with an economic uh, downturn as well. So a lot of tech companies are definitely tightening their belts, but yeah, they're talking about limiting their spending to what's essential, um, and and they were aiming for 400 million in operating profits for 2022. Um, Not sure if they hit that or not, but either way, yeah. So they were uh, delaying another game that they didn't mention by name. Then it was most likely Project Rift, which was a originally a DLC for Assassin's Creed Valhalla that they turned into a standalone game. And then so they were canceling some games too, Splinter Cell VR and Ghost Recon Frontline. Um, and it just goes on. And so, you know, but when the article was posted, there was a call, and Yamat had blamed Avatar's delay on broader COVID related production challenges. And I feel ya, COVID caused a lot of crunches and everywhere. There were, TV shows and movies that got delayed significantly because of COVID. And, so it's reasonable that game development would have been stunted too. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of processing power needed to produce certain game assets and certain aspects of the game. And if you have to work remotely, it gets costly and impractical to move certain things to employees' homes. And so, but either way, they're blaming it on that. And so that was probably a legitimate thing. I'll go with that. But, they also weren't taking, again, not wanting to acknowledge that we don't know how to treat our people. And so we have a lot of delays because our people don't want to work for us. And so, yeah, I mean, Assassin's Creed seems to be doing well. Um, and there's still, but either way, so 2022 was, very interesting. But yeah, multiple employees tell Kotaku different Ubisoft studios are facing fewer and fewer small raises for staff, less hiring, and various budget freezes. Um, and again, this is because many major tech companies are preparing for a potential recession. Um, but Ubisoft has way more problems than just that. So some of the stuff makes sense. Some of the stuff would happen even if they were a decent company. But, they create some of their own problems that exacerbate other problems that everybody else is having. And yeah, so when you have a game company and you're having to cancel and delay projects, especially when you got a really important project that's supposed to release around the same time as a movie. That's a big deal. And Avatar is a big franchise. They really needed to. I mean, that's terrible. They didn't get that released on time, but that's their own fault. They literally caused that themselves. They could have brought it a lot. They could have got it a lot closer. They probably still would have missed it a little bit because of COVID. But to be honest with you, saying March 2023 by the earliest, for a movie that for a game counterpart to a movie that came out in December, and they're reporting this in July. That's bullcrap. That's lazy. That's them not wanting to take accountability for, yeah, in addition to problems everybody else has, we got some other problems of our own that's causing some problems. So yeah, and let's see if that game had actually released yet, or if there's any update. And so I just did a quick Google search, and as it turns out, Google, well, Bing rather, is saying that the date, the best release date, that they said March 2023, and yeah, that's a joke, because they're saying March 31st, 2023, and that's the earliest date. So March 31st, they're saying March, but that's really only a day away from saying April. And so they're just they did this to themselves, is all I'm saying. So, you know, hopefully the game doesn't suck. Hopefully when it comes out it's actually good. But I'm not holding my breath. So now it's 2023, and yesterday, January 11th, there were three new articles put out by Kotaku. So I'm going to try and push through these, because they're all kind of long, and it's kind of a TLDR type situation. So essentially, they are not, in addition to the four games that were told to that we talked about for 2022. There's three new games that they're canceling. So let's see here. They were canceling three unannounced games. That's always fun. Yeah, we had these games. We can't tell you what they're for, but we're canceling. But they're it's because Ubisoft's on a very sharp decline. They're they're expecting a decline in sales of about 10%. They were hoping for 10% growth, but instead they're now expecting 10% decline. They're trying to save 200 million in cost savings over the next 2 years, so they're going to do some restructuring and some other things to try and save money. Um, they're also delaying Skull and Bones until early next year, it looks like. So they're pushing all sorts of stuff back, and it's because they're not doing well. And on top of that, like Assassin's Creed, that series hasn't had a new game since 2020, and it's been 3 years, no new Assassin's Creed game, and that's a problem too, because that's one of the games that helps Ubisoft do really well, because it's a really good game series. And yeah, so yeah, another article from Kotaku points out the same thing, that they've canceled at least 7 games in 6 months. Um, and the other article, yeah, so basically they put out three articles yesterday, uh, all at Kotaku, to basically say the same thing, and the same for the same reason. So that's pretty bad, when this is what's happening. We're not even a month into the year, and Ubisoft continues to decline and fall apart. Um, Now, as large as the company is, it may not go under. It'll probably save itself at some point, but just speculating. They'll either pull their heads out of their asses and make changes, and in the next year or two they'll be strong and good again, and hopefully not as stupid. But also, what's most likely to happen, if they don't just completely collapse, is they'll just get acquired by some company that knows how to treat their people right. And that's basically all it is. Like they're saying, oh, they're blaming COVID for stuff, they're blaming all this other stuff, but honestly, they did it to themselves. Hey, so I decided to record a video for the conclusion of this video instead of just the audio track with the images, but so just to let you know, I recorded the audio yesterday and I got about 3/4 of the way through editing, cutting, and whatnot, and I ended up just falling sick. So I didn't finish it till today. But so some of the words I used were kind of time based. They still kind of apply, but essentially, um, so Ubisoft, hopefully they turn around, and all the news articles that I referenced, I'll be putting the links in the description below, and hope to see you on the next one.